Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to be here in person. We had 70 people register to come in person tonight. It's very meaningful. We know you're all here because you care so much about our synagogue, and we're looking forward to a respectful and uplifting dialogue tonight. We have lots of exciting things to show you, and we're also looking for your input. So with no further ado, I'm going to ask Neil Duboff, our president, to come up.
Thank you very much, Rena. Welcome, everybody. Shalom. Rabbi, Cantor Leslie. I'm standing here today really humbled and grateful as the president of your synagogue. As we come together tonight, I'm here with enthusiasm for the future of our synagogue as a vibrant synagogue community. Each of you here in person and online holds a special place within our congregation, and your being here tonight reflects the vitality and strength that resides within our synagogue community. In the Talmud, our sages teach us, Kol Yisrael Arevim Zeh Bazeh. All of Israel is responsible for one another. This profound statement reminds us of the interconnectedness and interdependence of our synagogue community. It signifies that our collective well-being, the well-being of this synagogue, and the success of this synagogue are reliant. It depends upon your commitment and your active participation in the synagogue. We're not merely individuals. We're not merely 70 people here and those online worshiping side by side on Saturdays and Yom Tov. We're a community where every member contributes to the lifeblood and the success of this synagogue. You, the members, are actually the beating heart of our synagogue, and each one of you brings your unique talents and perspectives that enrich our community. Your being here, your involvement, your caring are essential to the continued growth and the flourishing of our sacred synagogue. Just as our ancestors built the tabernacle with united purpose and shared responsibility, we too must cultivate a sense of unity and dedication to the future of this congregation. In our quest to ensure the continued growth and prosperity of the synagogue, we find ourselves immersed in a complex process of planning. Because this planning process is so important to our collective future as a community, our lay leadership and staff need your advice and input. Our synagogue strategic planning process has already included an in-person planning session, a survey of staff, and some focus groups that have already taken place. And I want to thank all who participated in our planning so far, and by personally providing your advice and opinions on this matter. We're relying on your input, and that's the reason for our meeting tonight. I believe that there's a great deal of consensus about our ultimate vision for this synagogue. However, it shouldn't be a surprise to anybody in this room that there's going to be disagreements on the plan. That's expected. That's the way it should be. However, the process of finding consensus through discussion and compromise may sometimes feel difficult, arduous, and it can test the patience of those who are anxious to accelerate this process of renewal. Now, there's been much conversation over the past year about the planning for the renovation of the synagogue building. Our renovated building will be a welcoming and innovative space where tradition and modernity coexist harmoniously. It's going to enable us to better serve you, our congregation, as well as the wider community. It's going to provide a sanctuary for spiritual growth, education, and community engagement. The renovated facility will have a private daycare where we, Shaarey Zedek, can provide an important facility to our synagogue families, our young families, and introduce them to Jewish traditions and Jewish values. The event space upstairs has been designed to provide flexibility for our family services and for meals of condolence. And there's going to be more meeting rooms and classrooms for youth classes and adult continuing education. While we continue to plan the renovations, we must at the same time plan for how we will financially sustain and grow our synagogue into the future. We recognize that decisions about renovation and financial planning must all be based upon a plan to ensure that the Shaarey Zedek will continue to meet our evolving spiritual, social, and educational needs, and those of our children and those of our grandchildren. All planning that we do must be based on that. As we navigate this planning, let us remember the wisdom of the words of the Talmud, which remind us, do not be quick to anger, and you will not sin. Do not be quick to judge, and you will not be judged. Do not be quick to condemn, and you will not be condemned. That's from Pirkei Avot. And those words of ancient wisdom encapsulate the call upon us to resist the impulse to rush or make hasty judgments. Patience encourages us to approach our strategic, our financial, and our business planning with a measured and deliberate mindset. It reminds us to give careful thought to our actions, to consider various perspectives, and to act in harmony with our values. As we continue this important planning journey, I want to emphasize the central importance of communication. Your elected leadership has an obligation to listen to you. We have an obligation to communicate our plans and decisions. Communication is the lifeblood of any successful organization, and our synagogue is no exception. We are committed, your board is committed, to improving our communication channels to keep you informed, involved, and connected. We acknowledge that we may and likely will continue to encounter challenges along the way. We also acknowledge your board is not perfect, but they care. They care like each of you, and each of the board members are committed to the future of this synagogue. It's natural for uncertainty and impatience to arise. But let us remember, it's precisely during these moments that our resilience is tested. Our community, our synagogue, over more than 100 years, has weathered storms in the past, and with unity, with the trust and commitment of our congregants, we've emerged stronger. During this period of reflection and planning, let us also remember to be grateful. Gratitude for the opportunities that we've been blessed with as a community, as a synagogue. Let's be grateful for the community that we're part of and the resilience that's within this synagogue and every one of you. It's through gratitude and patience that we're going to overcome every challenge that may appear. We're going to build a future for this synagogue that's our testament to our commitment to Judaism and to one another. So I thank you for your unwavering dedication and support. Let us continue this journey together, inspired by the values that have defined us and motivated by the limitless possibilities that lie ahead for this synagogue. with warmth and optimism, we can look forward to work together to shape the future of our beloved Shaarey Zedek Synagogue. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Neil. Good evening, everyone. I would like to present to you just a short Var Torah to set the tone for this town hall. And, you know, there is a famous Mishnah, Pirkei Avot, where Korach and his men are presented as the prototype of negative debate. But that same Mishnah points out positive examples of argument as well. So we read in Pirkei Avot 5:17. Every argument which is for the sake of heaven will endure, whereas that which is not for the sake of heaven will not endure. What was an argument for the sake of heaven? That of Hillel and Shammai. What was an argument that it was not for the sake of heaven? That of Korach and his assembly. I believe that a little bit of extra information to understand the context is needed here. The Torah says that Korach and his followers challenged Moses and Aaron by saying, everybody in the entire assembly is holy, and God among them. Why do you put yourself above the congregation of God? Does not it seem to be an awesome, even holy, and justified claim? But in response, Moses remains silent. He doesn't engage. Moses chose to ignore the content of Korach's challenge because he understood that Korach himself didn't believe in the truth of his claims. On the contrary, his true motive was to get power and honor for himself. In light of this, we can understand the Mishnah's statement in Pirkei Avot that an argument which is not for the sake of heaven will not endure. When an argument is driven by selfish motives, in which the points being made are only a cover for an ulterior goal, and the misleading debater does not believe their own claims, nothing positive will come of it. Tonight, I would like to invite you all to be like Hillel and Shammai. About them, the Talmud says that a heavenly voice descended from on high and called out, this and this, and the words of the living God. May we all be illuminated from above to engage in a conversation for the sake of heaven. Thank you. Rina, back to you.
So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Rina Sector Elbaz, and I have had the honor of, in the past 2 months, of taking on the role of interim executive director. And so here I am tonight, and I'm going to be the master of ceremonies for this evening. So this is how it's going to go. First of all, we are going to have a land acknowledgement. We're going to talk about the renovation, and we're going to show you some very exciting images and updates that nobody has seen yet. We're going to talk about the daycare, and also we'll show you some images of that. We'll give you an update on where we're at in the campaign, and then we will talk about the strategic planning process. And today it is a preliminary draft that we're going to be looking at, and you should have received this document when you came in. So we'll be looking at that together. Once we've finished with the preliminary presentations, we will have a question and answer period. And we will also we'll start with a list of questions that were submitted in advance. We will have questions from the room, from the floor, and there will also be questions submitted in writing through the chat. After all of that, We will have more opportunities to sit and discuss and schmooze. As you saw when you came in, there are some tables in the foyer. Each table will have a staff member and a board member hosting it, and you can have open and honest conversations, and the staff will be taking notes. So all of your questions and concerns can be addressed either this evening or at a later date, but nothing will fall into the gap. We're going to try to make sure that we cover as much as possible. So let's begin with the land acknowledgement. We would like to begin by acknowledging that we are in Treaty 1 territory and that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and the homeland of the Métis Nation. And now we're going to have a look at our agenda for this evening. Sorry, I missed the objectives. You want to go back to that slide? So, why are we meeting tonight? We didn't want you to wait for the AGM to be able to talk about these things. We wanted to share information with the congregation on key areas of interest. And after, just before we do the question and answer period, we will have an opportunity to tell you about what's going on right now, in the present. We will provide an opportunity for asking questions and sharing feedback, and we want to be able to engage you as a community. So we have an order that we're going to be following this evening. We'll have the look at the renovation update, the daycare campaign update, and strategic planning process. So to talk about the renovation update, I'm going to invite Brent Bellamy, Dave Lalama, and Genevieve Bergman to come up and give us a little bit of a presentation with some wonderful images that they've prepared for us.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Is that good? I'm Dave Lalama, architect and partner at Number 10 Architectural Group. And first, just a couple thank yous. I want to thank each and every one of you for being here tonight. I won't repeat Neil's beautiful words, but it means so much that all of you are so passionate and care so much for this project and for your congregation. A second thank you to the leadership at Shaarey Zedek who have put their trust and faith in our team at Number 10 Architectural Group and our engineering team of MCW, mechanical and electrical engineers, and Crozier-Kilgore. We're deeply humbled and thankful to be part of such a wonderful project. A couple quick introductions. I have some of my colleagues here somewhere. I didn't see where Brent Bellamy, who's Number 10's creative director and really had a big part of this project. And Genevieve Bergman, our lead interior designer, is also a member of the congregation. The three of us will be tag teaming a little bit on this presentation. I thought I should just go back and just explain it. And some of you may or may not know this, but a little bit of the process and how we got to where we are today. This project started for our team in 2018. And I'll share with you, I think we set a record in our office for the team working on one project. We've introduced 3 beautiful young children into the office since the project started. So I think that should, I almost think that deserves a round of applause. Honestly, I should qualify. So Genevieve had a beautiful young daughter. Some of you know Taylor Hammond, also, who was met with so many of you, had a beautiful young daughter just about a month ago. And may I, Jen? May the third or the second child coming? Can I? Yeah. Okay. Well, I can make up a lie, Genevieve. And Genevieve's expecting their second child upcoming. So, but it did start for us in 2018. And through that process, there's been a lot of meetings, a lot of discussion, meetings with our team and staff members, with executive directors, with the board, with past presidents, current president, and the building committee. And I can honestly say that this project has benefited so much from all the input and all of that dialogue. The project is much better in the end result and the final design than it would have ever been without that input. So we're deeply appreciative of that. We're going to run through some plans and some images, some photographs, even of the construction that's underway, so that you'll see what the team of Ackman Construction has been doing in the building. So we're going to start. I don't know if I'm controlling the slides or are you, Robert? Okay. We'll start with walking you through the plan. And I guess before we do that, Brent, I know you're coming up in a while, but do you want to talk a little bit about the objectives and goals and what was important to our firm right from the onset when we took on the responsibilities of this project?
Hi, everyone. I just want to talk a little bit about the reverence that our firm has for this building and the reverence that I personally have for this building. It's one of the great pieces of architecture in the entire city and province. I would even say Western Canada. Not just because of what it means to the community, the Jewish community, what it means to the River Heights community, what it means to the community of Winnipeg, but what it also means to the architecture community. And that's a very small community, but we have a lot of pride in it. And I ride my bike past that building 4 to 6 times a day and have every day for my adult life. And I can't tell you the number of times I've stopped just to look at it and really appreciate what it is, because it really says to me what architecture should be. Imagine yourself as a 1940s Winnipegger, and that building landed on that site. You could put it there today in 2023, and it would look like a beautiful, modern, would fit perfectly into the architecture of today. So imagine what it did in the 1940s. It must have blown people away. And so that's what we strive to do. I hope that every piece of architecture that I create and that our team creates, in that length of time, people are still talking about it the way we talk about this building. So that's a huge responsibility for us when you come into a project having such reverence for an existing building. And that has sort of driven us and all our design thinking all the way through the project, is how to make this, our intervention into this spectacular building, as timeless as the building itself. And that we hope, trends come and go, but we hope that the way we touch it is as sensitive to the building as the original architects were to the site that they were given. And that's really driven all our decision making, and hopefully in the end, when everybody here enters that space for the first time, all the spaces for the first time, they feel like it's a modern version of what has always been there. So that's our goal for our design.
Thank you, Matt. Genevieve, why don't you join me up here? I don't know if can we share this mic, Robert, at the same time? Yeah? So then maybe we can, this guy's on. They're both on? Oh.
Okay.
So we'll walk you through the plan, and we're going to start for the plans and some images. We'll start with the lower level, and maybe just some big moves that you can be thinking about as we walk through the plan. There is a new entrance that we're going to show you for the riverside of the building. Neil fondly refers to it as the Bellamy entrance. But we have a sketch of that that we'll show you. That's right. That's the intent. And but some of the big moves, and if you're familiar with the lower level, the entrance currently is very, some have said it's unwelcoming. It's very narrow. It's not as pleasant as it. Oh, you can't hear me?
Or hold this close to you.
Does this work? Okay, I'm sorry. I apologize. Okay, where do you want me to start? Okay, some of the big moves that that you should look for and that we've expressed in the plan: a new entrance on the riverside, a new larger lobby area right when you walk in, and an area really that we think can be used in different ways than that lower level has been used before. It could be rearranged in terms of the furniture layout, et cetera, and can be programmed for different functions. Genevieve's going to walk us through the specifics of the plan, from the office area to classrooms to the daycare space. And after we look at the lower level, we'll move up to the upper level as well. Okay? Okay. Okay.
Do we have a pointer?
Okay, all right, here we go. So it's pointer at the top of the space, there's the entrance currently. Can you see that red dot? Oh, yes.
Can you guys see the red dot at the top of the screen? Okay, perfect. So as Dave mentioned, one of the main objectives with creating this new entry was the feeling that it felt kind of like a secondary entry. It didn't feel as welcoming and grand as the main entry. And how can we make this feel a little bit more special? And even from a wayfinding perspective, as most people park now in that parking lot, how do we make a clear path of travel into the building and also give a visual connection to entering the office? So as you enter into this new vestibule, we've created glazing so you can get a clear vantage point right there into the office from a security perspective as well. And then also a direct view of the new lounge area. So we are going to see some rendering shortly of this area, but we have multiple seating arrangements. We've made this entry a lot wider, and we also have a glass door with a glass side light with direct views to bring people into the office space. As you kind of progress into the lounge area, we'll actually move to the next slide. Sorry, it sounds like I'm so loud. Okay, so as you walk in, progress into the lounge, you can see that we have two flexible lounge layouts. We're going to see some renderings of this shortly, and we'll get into what this looks like from a 3D perspective as far as some of our new built-in millwork and what these walls and ceilings are going to start to feel like. But we just wanted to kind of walk you through and show you how we have these new areas with a lot more circulation space to really make it feel warm and welcoming in this area. And you can also see on the left side the new relocation of the gift shop. And that's where the gift shop display is going to be. So it will act also as a feature wall to that seating area and bring you into the new location of the gift shop as you progress into the daycare area. Sorry? Oh, the gift shop? Sorry, as you progress down where the blue box is on the left side, it says gift shop. Can you bring it down to over here? Yeah, sorry, there's a little bit of a lag with the mouse. Yeah, so there's the gift shop. And we'll just move on to the next slide. Okay, sure, sorry. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the washrooms. You can see here that we have a new revised layout for the men's washroom and for the women's washroom. So this is all updated from an accessibility standpoint and also from a code perspective. So we've increased the number of stalls in both washrooms, and we've actually revised the layout to create a private vestibule as you enter. So there's no vantage points into the washroom, creating a little bit more privacy. In the women's washroom specifically, we've created a little bit of a gathering space with some seating and additional mirror and countertop. to give a little bit more space so it's not as congested in the actual washroom where the sinks and stalls are. And also, from a design perspective, we've really been focusing on some of the details of the washroom as far as new lighting, making sure that the washroom stalls are very private with floor-to-ceiling washroom partitions, new materials that are very warm with some feature tile, and making them have a little bit more of a hospitality look and feel. Yes, they are.
I will remind you that if you don't mind, just keep all your questions for the end, because that way we can move forward, and some of the questions may be answered as the presentation progresses. Thank you.
And now just to give a quick overview of the office space, which is highlighted in the light blue. You can see that we've created a new reception area with some seating and additional storage space. We've reconfigured some of the private offices for the Shaarey Zedek staff, including a new revised lunchroom. We also have a new family room that can be also used as a meeting space as well. All of our new meeting rooms have been updated with new AV. We also have some open work areas at the top. You can see that we have a shared workspace on the right-hand corner where the mouse is going, with some additional storage as well. We have a new media room for broadcasting that will be used over, yeah, just almost there. Oh, we just passed it. Yes, so that will be an acoustically sound media room. And as you progress down the plan, we have an additional shared office space with some workstations that will be used for part-time staff, as well as a mix of some full-time staff. You can also see that we have a new teaching space, which is a flexible room as well. These are movable tables, so it can be reconfigured into a few different layouts depending on what type of meeting is going on, or if there's any sort of seminar or continuing education going on. We also have a catering office that is close proximity to the existing kitchen. And we have a meeting room that also acts as a bride's room as well. You'll see an alternate layout on the next page. Yes, so we've just pulled out a few alternate layouts just to highlight that these rooms are flexible. So you can see with the teaching space, an alternate configuration if there were to be a seminar going on. And you wanted to get more of a classroom style setup in there. And then you can see that the meeting room space also acts as a bride's room that will have some flexible lounge seating and additional seating that can be moved around for bride's makeup, with a washroom that is actually adjacent to the room. Yes. And now let Brent take over.
Maybe just skip to the next one. So this is just a view of the riverside. One of the issues with the building that Genevieve mentioned was that the entrance has really been flipped from the front, from the Wellington Crescent side to the river, functionally. Everybody parks there, everybody goes through that small little entrance, but it's lost its feeling of entering a sacred building, which it is, because you're sort of coming through the little single door, and you have the security there. So you're losing that real experience of coming into a sacred building. So we wanted to begin to recreate that, or to introduce that to this side of the building. So you can see what we've done is added a large entry feature piece that uses the language of the entry on the other side. It takes the stone from the other side, introduces it above the doors. We're showing wood doors, so it's a nice warm feel, the same way as you have on the other side of the building. And you can also begin to see we've introduced windows on the riverside, which is something that the building, it has such a prime site overlooking the river, but it really turns its back on the river. So what we're doing is opening up the two main spaces to the riverside. You can see on the right of the main entrance, those are large windows into the multi-purpose space, the big function space, which will flood lots of new natural light into that space and be something that nobody's ever experienced in that space before. It will feel very natural, and you'll have that beautiful view over the river. And then the windows to the left of the entrance are what we call clerestory windows, so high-level windows that will bring light into the space. You won't be able to see to the river, but it will bring light into the sanctuary, which I think will really change the feel of what that space is. And we'll talk about do you see the jog in the building, how the sanctuary space is actually higher? Yeah, right. Oh, I'll just go over there. Just keep in mind this space right here. There's actually a glass block wall right here that has been lost to the sanctuary space for 50 years or so when they changed the ceiling. And when we talk about the sanctuary, that will be a key driver of some of the decisions that we made. So you could just keep in mind that that's when we talk about that, that's what we're going to be talking about. So you can see how the entrance becomes this focal point on that side and becomes more of a ceremonial entrance. Similar to not quite as grand as the front, but begins to introduce that to the riverside.
Thank you. So this is actually a rendering as you enter from the lower level. So you can see that we have some built-in seating with a feature wall, behind it, and that you automatically get a view into the office space with the glazing and the glass side light. You can see in our finishes that we've introduced some warm walnuts with our feature walnut ceiling, and we've also updated with some warm wall coverings and new carpet, and a little glimpse into some of our millwork display wall. So this is a view looking at the first lounge area back at where the office entry is. So you can see here we once again have repeated a similar ceiling fixture to really ground these lounge spaces. I will note that we are currently still working on specifying all of the lounge furniture with the House and Building Committee. So at the moment this is still placeholders. But we are looking at furniture that is not only commercial grade, that also will stand the test of time, very durable, and also that is very friendly for all types of users, as it is in circulation going to the daycare, and it will be used by all ages. You can also see some of our built-in millwork that will also act as display, not only for the gift shop, but also is a library wall that will have different books and reading material. And now this is looking back at the same area to get a better view of the custom millwork. It also has some integrated seating. And now I'm going to hand it over to Dave to talk a little bit about the main floor.
Thanks, Jen. So we'll walk you through the upper level. And again, some of the big moves in the upper level, the sanctuary, now the ceiling has been totally redone and raised to about a 20-foot high level. And you'll see that in a sketch that's coming up. Brent mentioned the natural light that will also come into the sanctuary. In the event space, we're going to show you configurations of the event space where there are actually 3 rooms that can be made along the top of the plan, as well as a smaller event space. I think it's labeled Event Space 3 at the bottom of the plan. To the left of the Event Space 3, the washrooms are going to be completely redone, and they will include an accessible barrier-free washroom, all new finishes for those washrooms as well. I think we need the next slide. Over the course of the project, we've looked at different seating arrangements and different configurations in the event space. These are just examples of different seating arrangements. The plan on the left are tables of 10 with the movable partitions completely open and a curtain at the back of the sanctuary as the divider between the event space and the sanctuary. In that configuration, that's approximately 270 seats in that configuration. The one on the right is showing a different configuration with smaller tables. I believe this is tables of 8. And we're getting how many in there? I can't. And this is 310 in that seating arrangement. If we go to the next slide, please. And these are just different configurations, I think, temporarily cut out. On the left-hand side is showing a configuration of a head table on the left side in front of the stage with a dance floor, and then seating in that configuration on the left. And on the right-hand side, perhaps some buffet tables in the top left corner, room for another dance floor in that option, and then some seating. And we can go to the left as well, or to the next slide. We thought we would show one plan that has, I think I'm cutting out. Is that better? Okay. This shows on the left-hand side where the stage used to be. If the acoustic walls are shut, that's the dash line down the page, you can have a function in the event space closest or to the left. You have an event to the right, and a small event space behind or the back of the sanctuary as well. And then event space 3, again at the bottom of the page, could also be used. Of course, there's the chapel and the sanctuary. Next slide, please. And this was, we were asked during different discussions about the use of the chapel, and could the chapel perhaps be used for family services as well if every other space was being used simultaneously. So just something to consider for more discussion. Next slide, please. And this one I think I'll hand over first to Brent and then Genevieve.
So this is just a view of the sanctuary itself. The big move that I mentioned earlier, I think that's going to shock everybody when they go into that space for the first time, is the ceiling itself. For when they installed air conditioning in, I think it was the 1970s, they dropped the ceiling and created a space. Really, the ducts were really the space between the roof and the ceiling itself. And that's why the ceiling is much lower than it used to be. The building used to be a big shoebox, and it was lowered and actually sloped, so the big glass wall at the back was really no longer part of the sanctuary experience itself. So that was our big move initially when we walked into the space, was to reintroduce that big glass block wall into the sanctuary and have northern light, diffuse light, flooding that space and making it feel like a really warm, inviting space, something that I think everyone is going to be blown away with in the end. That's going to be the big sort of physical change to that space. So as we were designing, our initial plan was actually to slope the ceiling towards the bema to create a bit of sense of intimacy towards the bema. As you move forward into the space, if there's a smaller congregation, they can sit at the front, and so the idea was that the space would feel a little bit more intimate, closer to the bema. Through discussions with many people, and as we've gone through the design process, the feeling was that it would be better if we really pushed the ceiling as high as we could. And so the space will be as voluminous as possible. And so what we're doing is we're introducing a beautiful wood slat ceiling that works with the wood of the pews. And what that does is it will hide the mechanical ducting that's above and introduce a beautiful, warm ceiling into the space. If you maybe just click to the next slide. Yeah, not what I was thinking, but on, we showed on the exterior renderings a clerestory window that goes all the way along the riverside. That will be high up, essentially like this is looking towards the chapel, but if you can imagine standing here looking the other direction, the ceiling will do the exact same thing, but there will be windows behind it. So the idea was that those slats would ensure that there was no direct light coming into the space. We don't want glare and direct lighting coming into the space to be uncomfortable. So those slats will create shadows and really act almost as blinds on the window. So you'll get the light in, but it'll be diffuse and more comfortable. But you can begin to see how the space is much higher, has much more volume than it ever has in the past, or has for 50 years. And the ceiling will feel like right now it's that sort of popcorn acoustic 1970s stippled ceiling kind of thing. It will be this really elegant wood ceiling, and I think that's the overarching feel that you'll have when you walk into the space. Do you want to just maybe slip back to the last one, and I'll let Genevieve talk about the bima and the finish.
Thank you. Just a touch on the bima area. We've kept relatively the same sort of footprint and kept the bima intact. We've also kept we've kept the bronze wall to really play off the warmth of it, where we have bronze accents throughout the space. We also have completely updated all of the flooring from an acoustic perspective to have a carpet that will absorb sound. It has a beautiful abstract gradient, bringing in some blue accents. You can see that we also have a new seating area behind the bima that is going to be integrated tiered seating, kind of adding to the backdrop of that area. And then it is hard to see a little bit, but you can see the texturing of all of the surrounding perimeter walls. They're going to be in a plaster finish to give a little bit of texture and sheen to the wall that will really give a beautiful contrast with some of the wood graining and the light that we have shining through the space. And the upgraded seating that is also in the walnut with updated upholstered seating as well as part of it. Yes, all the pews are new.
Some of you may wonder why we decided to go with new pews, simply because it was less expensive to get new pews, and going into a new building, it was felt that to have new pews would also be something very important to go with the total look. We will be either selling or donating the old pews, so they're not going to go to the garbage, and it will go to some kind of a sustainable project. So that was important, that the congregation should know that.
Yeah, so just to take a view of the brand new event space, you can see that there's a lot more natural light. I'll let Brent talk about the new windows in more detail. You can see also that we have a brand new ceiling that also plays with the walnut finish of the slats. So there's that cohesiveness in the space. In this application, in this area, it's more of a flat paneled ceiling with feature mid-century inspired light fixtures to give more of a hospitality decorative element into the space. And you can see that we also have new LVT wood floor to create warmth, and that we've also brought in the plaster finish that we just saw in the sanctuary, and it continues to make the whole space feel very cohesive in here as well. And some updated furnishings as well.
And we thought we'd bring some pictures from the site of the space under construction. So you may not recognize a lot of this, but the building is well underway. I commend the team from Ackman Construction. I think Jared and Michael are here somewhere. And We can just go through a couple of these. We'll go to the next slide. Yeah, oh, yeah, here's a picture. So we're in the event space, and all the old ceiling that Brent mentioned and the ductwork that was hiding a lot of the upper walls. You can see the windows on the top right where the natural light is now coming into the space, where you haven't seen that for years. Yeah.
That was actually something really amazing that we didn't even know existed. It was hidden when they put the ceiling in to create the air conditioning. They completely blocked off a whole row, an entire row of glass block windows along the top. And we were walking around the outside of the building, and we looked and thought, where is that? And we found that it was actually above the ceiling. So you can imagine this space when it's redone with big windows along that side, overlooking the river. You can stand and enjoy the river view, and light pouring in from the other side as well. So it's going to feel like a completely different space. Previously, it was completely introverted, no natural light at all. Now it's going to have big windows facing the river and light flooding in from the other side, from windows that have been hidden for 50 years.
And this is in the sanctuary itself. Again, you can see the finished ceiling now will be around 20 feet 6 inches high in the sanctuary compared to what was there all these years. We'll go to the next slide. And this is looking actually from the bema, looking back towards the event space. You can see the high clear story windows, sort of right, yeah. Again, those will be visible, more visible in the new space. And next slide. Brent wants to say something.
Just flip back to the last. Thanks. If you can also imagine along that wall right there, there will be the high windows that go all the way along. So you're standing at the front, you'll be looking back and having that light pour in from the north, and then also along the riverside on that side. It's going to completely change the feel of that space.
All right, just another more close-up shot of those high existing windows that you'll see from the sanctuary side. And next slide. And this is looking into the chapel. The new opening between the chapel and the sanctuary is going to be higher. So you'll have a better view from the seats in the sanctuary from the seats of the chapel into the sanctuary when it is open for larger events. And I think one of our construction guys just wanted to show you a picture of the roof on the left. So that's what construction guys do, right? And Jared, look, Jared is happy. You're getting a new roof. And I think the photo on the right are some of the walls that are going up right now on the lower level. And I think that's our presentation. So, oh, okay.
I also just wanted to quickly thank Ivy Brooker, who's joining us virtually from our design team, who's been working very hard on this presentation. She actually came down with a really bad sinus infection and wanted to be here today. But just wanted to say thank you to her.
Thank you all so much. You can really feel that this is not just another project. I really feel your passion, all of you, and thank you so much for sharing that with us. As you can see, this is not the same project we saw 6 months ago or a year ago. A lot of the changes that you have seen today are because of the surveys that we had, because of the focus groups, and what you have been telling us. And you can see there's a lot of changes because of that. So thank you very much for hearing us and for helping bring this dream to life. I also want to thank Michael Fenn and Jared Ackman, who are here today from Ackman Construction. We meet every 2 weeks in the trailer. And they're also a super dynamic team. Some of them aren't here today. I also want to thank Dov and Sarah, who are representing the House and Building Committee. A lot of hours have been put in on this project. So we're going to move on now, because this may be like the Passover Seder until Chatzot Halayla, but that's why you're all here, right? So we're going to move on, and we're going to be now talking about the daycare. So first of all, understand, and some people don't know that this is going to be a private Shaarey Zedek run Jewish daycare. And that's very important. And I'm going to invite Jonathan Croft to come up and explain to you how we came to that decision. And then I will take the mic back and talk to you about the benefits.
Thank you. I have 2 minutes to persuade you that we've done a lot of hard work to come to the conclusion that we're going to try the daycare. And let me just quickly then outline our thinking so that you can then, so that you can follow it, and then you'll say what you say, and I'll answer questions later. When I got involved as a member of the board in the daycare, we had pretty much come to a conclusion, as the majority of the congregation, that all else being equal, it would be wonderful to have a daycare there. Rena will speak more to that. And we were presenting it, and a number of members of the congregation and curmudgeons like myself said, well, that's great, but we also have to look at the cost and whether we can pull it off. There are really 3 costs that we ultimately considered. One is the capital cost, the cost of building it. Now, the cost of building it, we had to do work in that area, the lower lounge anyway. So really the cost of a daycare is the extra cost we would have to put in order to make the space suitable for a daycare. So that was one cost. The second thing we were thinking about was, what about the cost of operating it? Is this going to cost us money? Maybe it will make us money. We weren't satisfied, and I say we because this came from a lot of conversations with the congregation. Were we confident enough, as confident as you can be about the future, that we could sustain the daycare? Then the third kind of cost, which isn't so much a money cost, is what are we giving up in terms of space that we could be using for something else? And are we going to be able to accommodate the programs we all want to continue, even though the lower lounge is going to be used for the daycare purpose? So those were the 3 costs we looked at. The capital cost was actually the easiest, both because we had a very generous donor who was very committed to having a daycare and was prepared to essentially pay the cost of the extra work that would have to be done to that room to make the daycare. And in the grand scheme of things, the capital cost and the amount to just actually build it wasn't, in the context of this whole project, that huge. So we did look at that, and we got comfortable that we could pay for it initially. The more complicated cost was, well, how are we going to run it, and are we going to be able to pull this off? We did a lot of work on that because everybody agreed if we're going to have to subsidize this more than just giving the space, so it's going to be an ongoing cost for the shul, that would be problematic. And so we needed a business plan so that we could make sure that we had a reasonable confidence that we could actually make this either not adding to the cost of the operation of the shul, or hopefully adding to the revenue of the shul, the profit. I know you're not supposed to use profit about the shul. So we did a lot of work. David Stern was very involved on the financial side, and Richard Pollack, and Fanny Zentner as well. And we met with all kinds of people. Our executive director talked to a lot of other daycare operators that were doing, in churches and other religious institutions and in other institutions in our community. they were kind enough to share some of their operating statements with us so we could try to figure out what exactly this was going to cost. And we came to the conclusion that we think that there's a good shot that we will be able to do this without any additional cost to the shul on an ongoing basis. And in fact, on the best case scenario, it would be I don't know what the word is to use, not a profit center, but excess revenue that would be able to help us with some of our other costs. So that was the second cost, the operating costs. There's no guarantees, but you know, we think it's a reasonable opportunity to do that. The third piece, third cost was what, if anything, were we going to have to give up in terms of space and how might that impact on our programming? I'm not a building guy. We turned that over to the architects, and you've sort of got the preview of that, what it's going to look like with the daycare. I'm not going to speak to, there's some issues, you know, we heard a lot of issues about, well, you know, where will we have the family service during Shabbat? Where will we have the alternative service that we like to have on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur? And there were other questions, you know, where's the gift shop going to go? Because we did have to give up some space that could be used for something else. I'm satisfied, based on the professional advice we received, and you've just heard it, and also input from Dov and Sarah, that we don't have to give up any programs in order to have the daycare. So we'll be okay on that third cost. So that's the history of how we came to the conclusion that this is feasible and that the benefit can be had without a cost that we can't afford. I don't have anything more to say about the process.
Thank you so much. This is very important to understand how we came to this decision. And we all understand that this is not a purpose of gaining money or the financial sustainability specifically, but we have benefits that are important to us as a synagogue community. So can we show the next slide? And there we have it. What are the real benefits of having a daycare? First of all, this is a daycare that is serving Shaarey Zedek members and their families. It's offering a program that's infused with Jewish content provided by Shaarey Zedek clergy and education team. There was a lot of concern that if it was a public daycare, we would have no influence on what was going on there, and we wouldn't even necessarily have children from our own community. This is not the case. We are going to be coming into the daycare and making challah and singing Shabbat songs. Cantor Leslie will go in there, the rabbi will go in there, we'll tell PJ Library stories in there. This is going to be our daycare. And it's an opportunity for us to attract and engage young Jewish families and be a part of their life cycle events, and also attract new families to our synagogue community. Those are the reasons we want to do this daycare. So let's look at the next slide. So what are we doing? We're going to have 32 spaces. Why 32, you ask? It's specifically calculated according to the ratio of children for leaders. So for example, we are going to have 4 toddlers because it's 4-to-1 with the ratio. And then the rest will be preschool and toddlers ages 3 to 4. And as you saw, it's going to be located in the lower level of the building. I have been meeting, and the team from Ackman and the architects, we've been meeting with the provincial daycare coordinator. We've had several Zoom meetings or Teams meetings where we've been showing what our space looks like, and they've been giving us feedback, and we've been tweaking it so that we fully use the space we're given, and we have the exact number of leaders so that we're not paying for extra staff that we don't have to. So as far as that goes, we're really going to meet all of the requirements for this daycare to run smoothly. And we're also very lucky to have the input of Eleonora Caporolini, who is in charge of the Rady JCC daycare, and she's been providing us with a lot of expertise. So now let's look at how the daycare space is being used and what alternative spaces. Can we show the next slide? There it is. Okay, so the daycare space you can see in blue. We have 3 different rooms. One is the infant room, the toddler room, the preschool room. And it's right there when you come in. Parents will have a fob and they will be able to access the daycare safely. So there's, you know, an attention to security there. That's going to be very important. I don't know, can you see the writing on the screen from where you are? I think that what interests you the most is, what about everything that would take place in there before? So we're going to take the next slide and we're going to look upstairs. Okay, so we could, if we needed to, use the daycare space on Shabbat. So what takes place in that space? During the week, we would have the Babas and Babies or Zetas and Babies program. That could take place upstairs. Yeah, the main floor plan. Can you go forward one? Oops. Hang on. Okay. We'll go back to where we were before. So we would be able to continue to have the Babas and Babies program during the week. It would be in the upstairs area. We would move toys in and out the way that we already do that. Then what happens on Shabbat? Shabbat, we would have the main service, the family service, and the Kiddush. We already have those 3 spaces available to us upstairs. So the main service would be in the sanctuary. The family service would be at the back near where the stage was, totally separated. And then we would have the Kiddush in the space between the sanctuary and where the family service is. Now you're probably asking, what about if it's a big bar mitzvah and we need the whole auditorium? What do? The family service could go into the chapel area. And we will not be doing split kiddushes anymore. There's been a lot of discussion that it doesn't build community, so that we wouldn't have the problem of needing 2 spaces for the Shabbat Kiddush. Any other slides? I think that's about, yeah. So that's to give you an idea about the daycare, and we'll entertain other questions when we get to the Q&A. Now we're going to move into the next section, and I'm going to ask Neil to come up, but understand that today's document that you have is actually the result of many meetings and feedback that's been provided. We didn't just pull it out of a hat and create it without input from the congregation.
So, there's a lot of questions about the finances of the project. And on the one hand, the project, that's the daycare, the project itself, we've been estimating in the $17 million range. So I just got to find my notes here. Yep. We've been looking at $17 million as the overall project. Maybe this mic is better. We've been looking at $17 million as the overall project, but let me break that down a little bit. Of the $17 million, about $13 million of the $17 million is the current construction budget. We were sitting with about a $900,000 contingency fund as part of the project, and as of today's date, we still have about $550,000 left in the contingency. There are a number of costs that still are going to be added to that. For example, there's going to be the windows on the Wellington Crescent side still are being costed. There's going to be the Bellamy entrance on the Wellington Crest, on the river side that still has to be costed. But even with that, we're looking at $13 million, as I say, and while Number 10 has not been able to give us, and Ackman has not been able to give us a firm cost for either the windows or for the back entrance. What we do know is that the soft cost budget is about $2 million the way it was first funded. So with the 13 and with the 2 for the soft cost, we still have a lot of room left for the windows and for the entrance on the riverside. But having said that, with the help of Elliott Roden, we believe that we should be able to fund this project with very little interest cost to the bank, which we have built into the soft cost budget. In the soft cost budget of $2 million is about $1.5 million of interest cost to the bank. We're anticipating that we can cut that down significantly and maybe to zero. And first of all, in terms of the numbers that have been collected, to date, we have over $5 million received. We have $3 million that the synagogue committed some number of years ago, which is that $8.2 million. And we will be self-funding part of the balance of the project. And what we're hoping is that if this goes well, and with some other monies that we're hoping to accelerate, and fundraising which we want to continue, that we'll have little or no interest, and that the soft cost budget, which was $2 million, may end up being in the $1 million range, again, which with all of that will bring us in, we hope, less than 17 million. So that's what's happening on the fundraising. We have applied to the province of Manitoba under a funding program that's going on now. It's a $50 million fund that the province has, and we should hear by the end of June or middle of July about how our application has gone. And to the extent that we're successful, we're told that monies will be dispersed by August. So it's to the extent that we're successful in that too will cut down cash requirements. Bill Wiseman, who we all know has been fabulous shamus with our synagogue, a friend to all. Bill is also working to make sure that all of our members have the opportunity to contribute to the project. So that's an update on the finances, and I know that there will be more questions after, which we'll be happy to answer.
Thank you so much. I also want to thank Bob Friedman, who's here, who is our campaign manager, and this is more of a vocation for Bob, and he is tireless and full of energy and positivity in his pursuit of this important job, and we're grateful to you for that. Thank you, Bob. So now we head into the strategic planning process. So why and how did this start? In the spring of 2022, we began with a series of events, a leadership retreat that took place. There were meetings with staff and lay leaders. We had a town hall and a member survey in the spring of 2022, and there were 5 focus groups with the Goldstein Group, November through February 2022-2023. The results of which have led to this preliminary draft strategic plan that you have in front of you. And there have been some key priorities that have been identified, which we will see on the next slide. Engagement, leadership development, and financial sustainability. So for engagement, let's look at the first point. Our members feel engaged and connected with Shaarey Zedek, and we set different objectives and activities to increase how we evolve our community, how we cater to newcomers and younger families, and how we create new spaces to celebrate Jewish life and to live Jewishly. We have already embarked on a lot of these goals. We are not waiting to be in our new building. We have started. Every Thursday, some of you may have seen some of our team across from Schmoozers at the Thursday's engagement table. And we have newcomers who are here on exploratory visits and they meet with us. Every Thursday we have a new family that comes and we sit there and we engage the community. And people come and sit with us and they ask questions. We even feed them an Applejack. If you are here on a Thursday morning and you want to have a chat, we're always there. Leadership development. We pursue continuous leadership training with our board and lay leaders, staff and volunteers to secure the next generation of leaders. We have a lot of projects underway now, and I would use this time also to let you know that we have these courses that reoccur every year where we provide opportunities to learn Hebrew, Hebrew reading to help people understand and participate in the prayer service. We have a course on basic Judaism. We have courses on Jewish history, history of Israel and Zionism. These courses take place on a yearly basis, and this is also an opportunity for our board and staff to increase their education of understanding. And then the third goal, financial sustainability. So we're uniquely positioned to create new revenue lines with a state-of-the-art facility available to our congregation and other Jewish organizations. I was recently at a luncheon for the Remus group that took place at Gwen Sector. We usually host that luncheon and many similar luncheons that take place on a weekly basis. When we get our building back, they're going to come back. They're going to use our beautiful facility for that. We'll focus on revenue streams through naming rights, programs and initiatives that carry the multi-generational legacy, financial gifts that speak to each individual and their family priorities. Everybody has something that's meaningful to them. It might be something in the chapel, and you sit at a certain pew and you see the names of your loved ones on that wall. It might be something in the sanctuary or something to do with the social hall. But there will be opportunities for everybody to have something meaningful. So the next steps to incorporate feedback, and shortly we will be gaining more feedback from you as we go into the question and answer period. And it's feedback from everybody, from our members, from the clergy, from the staff, lay leaders and stakeholders. We want to hear from you. And if tonight you don't have the feeling that you've been satisfied and you still have questions and concerns, Neil and I will sit down with you, we'll make an appointment, we'll sit and we'll schmooze, we'll visit, and we'll hear what you have to say. It's very important for us that everybody be heard. And we hope to release this strategic plan in fall and winter 2023. So before we go into the question and answer period, there's a few things I'd like to update you on. You're probably curious about this free high holiday seats. Yes? You want to know why we're doing this free high holiday seats? Because we really want to show that our priority is to get people back in person. We want to be a kehila where people come and gather. Moadim l'simcha means times of joy in gathering, and we can't do it unless you come back. So we wanted to do something big and bold and bring people back in person. And we decided every 2 weeks we're going to launch a new big announcement. So first it was the free seats for members. Non-members have the opportunity to volunteer and earn their seats because we still want to be inclusive. You can pay for your seats if you don't have time to volunteer. But we want to also show our members that we care about you. We know that you've been patient through the pandemic, through all the renovations. You come first. So we're going to be here in the building. We're going to be in the gymnasium. We have to fill it. We have Barry Kay, who's going to do the sound and the lighting for us. We have Rabbi Green, who's coming back. And we're going to have a family service with Rabbi Mass and Noah Trachtenberg. She's a young adult, and she's going to be helping lead that service. And then we will have, for Rosh Hashanah, Rabbi Green in the main service with Cantor Leslie. We'll have our quartet. We're going to have a folk choir, and we're hoping that the folk choir and all their family and friends will also help populate the service. We really want you back, and we're going to do all sorts of big and bold things to bring you. So I'm hoping that you will come out and understand why we're doing this for free. I have to say that when we offered the online service for free, year before last, we made 75% of what we usually make in ticket sales, we made back in donations. So we're hoping that those who can contribute will, but we want to be there for everybody, and we want everybody to come out. You may have also seen that one of our goals is to attract young adults. So we have a very active young adult group. They meet once a month on a Friday night for a Shabbat dinner. We had Deb and Louis Stern in the group. They've been hosting some of these programs, and it's been growing. We started with a smaller group of 10 or so people. Last month, just actually 3 weeks ago, we had a beautiful Shabbat dinner with 20 young adults. And then we've got coming up this Saturday night, we're doing a Havdalah party, and we'll probably double those numbers. And they're coming back, and they're participating, and they come to Shabbat services. So that's one of the very exciting things that we're offering. Another thing that we're going to be doing with our clergy in the fall is expanding the way we do our B'nai Mitzvah program, so that instead of just the one-on-one classes, we'll bring groups of kids together so that they can learn things that they can learn in common, and we'll start building these little cohorts of B'nai Mitzvah kids. And that's something that we're going to be doing as we prepare to go back into the building. We want you to be excited about it. If you're interested in coming in getting involved on one of the committees, please be in touch with me or Neil or our clergy. Know that our clergy is really going above and beyond to make sure that we visit the sick. We're there for families in need. If you know about somebody who needs a visit, let us know. This is very important that our clergy know about it so we can schedule these type of things. Now, I don't want to keep you any longer. It's really time now for you to participate. So we have Leon and Tali who will be managing the 2 microphones. So if you want to line up and come and ask your questions, while you're doing that, I'm going to have a quick peek at some of the questions that came in beforehand. Somebody was asking about the question of high holiday revenue. What do we do if there's a shortfall? I think that I've already provided the answer for you. We're hoping that people will be generous, but we're also doing it here at the campus, which will be less expensive for us. We don't pay for the extra space. We have the free parking available. We're trying to be responsible with the way we spend money. So there's that question that came up. Let's have a question now from the floor. Max, and please identify yourself if I haven't done so.
My name is Max.
Hi, Max.
My question is for the number 10 group. Can you just elaborate and tell us what you're doing, or how certain we're going to be that there's going to be concert hall quality acoustics in the sanctuary so that we can listen to Cantor Leslie? That is critical, and I've seen it screwed up in many venues. And so, what specifically are you doing?
Can you come to the front to present that? Thank you.
The ceiling treatment is a big deal in any space when it comes to acoustics. So the slats that were shown in the rendering, above those slats is a full acoustic ceiling. So there will be absorption from that material. The carpeting, the textured walls all contribute to better acoustics. The AV system itself and the design of the AV system is another critical piece. That's underway currently as well, so that's in progress. The acoustic walls that are being used are also of a high quality. I don't like throwing out engineering numbers, but they're of a high quality, an STC of 50, which is similar to the noise separation that's required between hotel rooms, for instance. I always caution, when a door opens, You're going to get some noise bleeding out of a door. When there's something very, very loud going on in one space and something very quiet going on one space, again, someone opens a door, you're gonna hear something.
When Cantor Leslie, is it going to be like a concert hall? Can you assure us? That's what I want to know.
You know, pardon me? Oh,
Microphone?
okay, there you go.
Thank you. Yeah, I was part of the meeting with the sound guy who is providing the sound system, and it's really impressive. It's going to be an array of speakers hanging from the ceiling in different angles, so it's going to cover the entire sanctuary. It's two, so my understanding is going to be stereo, the new sanctuary. So when you have the cantor and a choir and an instrument, it's going to be really state-of-the-art. I saw it. It's really great.
I understand it's going to be state-of-the-art. We're spending a lot of money. We have great materials. Is it going to work? That's the question.
Yes. And the other thing, this is very important because, for example, right now we have problem. I can't hear you. Do you know why? Because the limitations of the room, the sound guy is behind the curtain, so he cannot hear what's going on here. In the new sanctuary, they are building like an audiovisual booth in the back, so Marvin could hear exactly what's going into the room. Right?
Okay, please try to respect the process. I know you have a great question, but would you mind lining up to ask it? Now we've heard it, so the rabbi will answer, but if we could avoid just shouting out, it would be appreciated. Sorry.
Yeah. Did I answer your question? It's going to work.
Guaranteed?
Yes.
Okay.
So, Rabbi, because this is part of the same question, if you wouldn't mind answering about the
didn't
sound
hear it.
engineering.
There is a company. I don't know who else is involved. I met with Marvin Polanski with a person. His name is Matt Brody, I believe his name, right? And he did all the research. I don't know. I guess he consulted with somebody because he came with very specific brands, positions, angles. Like there is like an electronic that is going to consider the different angles. So because the sound travels at specific speed, so it's not the same if you're in the first row and the last row. All that is considered. So it's really impressive. It's going to be state of the art to the point if we want to even rent the place to have a concert there, it's going to be great. So yeah.
Thank you, Rabbi. Just before we go to the next question, I just wanted to note that Stephanie from the Jewish Foundation of Manitoba is here. So thank you for being present. And also, with our campaign, we have Jody Novak, our campaign manager, who is watching online, and I want to thank her also for her tireless efforts. So we have another question over here. Please
Yes, I have a
introduce
question.
yourself.
I've been attending high holiday services for over 50 years, and I sit at the extreme left of the sanctuary. And during the entire service, I find I have to have my head turned 45 degrees so that I could look at the Aron Kodesh of the Bima. So my question really is probably for Brent or the architectural team. Is it possible to take the new pews on either side, the extreme sides of the sanctuary, and angle them in? And by angling them in, you would also possibly open up the exit angles for people that tend to congregate. At the end of the service, there's always congestion there. So that when we look at the service, we're looking straight on rather than having to look at the side.
Do you want to hear? I think you could. I have a microphone right here if you'd like.
Brent just said he'd pay me $20 if I took this question, so no, I'm joking. We are working with the pew manufacturers, and we're working on the specific layout of the pews. There are some challenges when we start angling. I just want to be open with you because it takes some space away behind the pews and on circulation. The most current plan, most efficient way of getting more seats is not to angle them. But
Then the question is, do you need more seats? Do you need all of the seats that you have?
Yeah.
And would there be a smaller number that you could reduce them by to make this so much more comfortable?
yeah, Here's what I'll tell you. If the final design and layout of the pews is not set yet, there's back and forth, and we will review that further. We'll review it with the building committee and get their input, and we'll look at those options that include perhaps a slight angle versus the straight. Okay.
Okay, so thank you very much. Thank you so much. Robert is going to read a question from the chat, please.
We have a question from Beverly Zatzer. I didn't notice any railing going up to the bema for people who have difficulty walking up for an aliyah. More of a statement, I guess.
Yes, give him the microphone.
Sorry, I apologize. I didn't hear the question. Sorry. There is a ramp on the left-hand side going up. By building code, a railing is not required at the front in the steps. So currently in the design, there is no railing. The issue in different places of worship with a railing somewhere at the front is that it always impacts sight lines. So currently there isn't, but there is a ramp along the left-hand side with a proper railing to go up the ramp. That answer your question? Okay.
Okay, before we go on to the next question, there was a concern about attracting more members, but also member retention. So this is one of the reasons that we will invite people to join committees. We are already doing a lot of work, but it's always good to have new people with new ideas join our committees to help plan for these new things as we go into the building. Let's have Michael Halpern.
Actually, David was next.
Oh, David, sorry.
This one is actually for the rabbi. There was a comment made on the interior design that I have a halacha question about. They were referring to all the millwork being walnut. From a kashrut standpoint, the sustainability of walnut and the fact that it's eitz pre, how does that stand halachically to be doing walnut as a major millwork?
That's a deep question, David.
I don't know if I can answer that right like this.
That's okay. We
I
can
need
get
to
the
think about
research
that one.
and get back to him.
I don't want to, yeah. I don't want to have to resort to rabbinic creativity to answer, but it's a great question.
Okay, who's next? Michael.
Simple. When are we going to be in there?
The goal is to be back in the spring of 2024, but you know, it's kind of exciting to know that we're ahead of schedule. Maybe someone from the Ackman group could speak to that if I didn't get that accurate.
Thank you.
Jared.
Thanks. Yeah, Jared Ackman with Ackman Construction. Right now, we are on track for May of 2024 to be completed the project. Thank you.
Thank you.
We got you on video.
But
Are you lined up for questions here?
Yeah, we're still hoping it's going to be May, but be clear, it still takes a bit of time to move back in and do the furnishings. So don't expect at the end of May that we're going to be back in there. It's going to have to get furnished and artwork and everything moved back into the place. You're probably looking at another month, but certainly by Yontif we'll be back.
There was a question regarding getting some feedback about what the Goldstein survey and reports contained, and that will be made available in a larger draft strategic plan. What we prepared for you this evening was more of a 101 version, and that's already 8 pages, but we would be happy to make the larger document available. We're just working on trying to process it, but that would absolutely be available to anybody who would like that information. Another question from the chat, please.
Okay, we have a question from Joanne Seif. Will both the male and female washrooms have changing tables? And will there be a designated place for breastfeeding that's not in the bathrooms?
In the women's washroom, we actually have change tables, integrated change tables that are made out of the same material as our countertop in both of the washrooms as part of our design. And then in the women's washroom, we do have the private area with some lounge chairs and a table that you saw where the additional mirror and countertop is, that would be also used as sort of a quiet area for that. And then there's also the universal toilet room that could also be used for something like that as well.
Can you please clarify universal toilet room? The reason I'm asking is because I think the next question speaks to that.
Okay.
Joanne also wanted to know if there were non-binary washrooms and to speak about other accessibility within our washrooms, which I think has been talked.
Sure. Yes, so we've updated everything to the current code where we have our universal toilet rooms on both floors, which are full accessible washrooms. They're also gender neutral, so they're intended for all-inclusive as well. And in those washrooms, we have the updated accessibility as far as the turning radius. We have all the required grab bars, and we have sinks that are at an accessible height for wheelchairs, and tilted mirrors that are also the proper height for if you are in a wheelchair. They also have ADOs, which you can just touch, so you don't have to pull the door. And we have all of the necessary dimensions as you approach as well, so they are fully accessible.
Thank you. That was pretty thorough. I have 3 questions that are financially connected, so I'm going to ask the 3, and that way, David, you could speak to them if you are able. So, somebody asked about the strategic plan having a financial forecast, and then there was a question about a plan to hire additional clergy and how that would be financed. And if you want to, what is that, Siri? Okay. And then there's another question having to do with the protecting the trees that are along the riverbank, because there's a couple of trees that are quite compromised, and the idea of doing a retaining wall. So those questions, maybe David, you can come and address them. David Stern is the chair of our finances.
So on the sustainability on the finance side, what we needed to do with the strategic plan is make sure that we understood all of the activities of what we're doing. Specifically the daycare, there is a pre-revenue model of daycare and a post-revenue model of daycare, all of which it's very important to say that we strive for a balanced budget. And as you know, through COVID, with all of our programming activities and events that we couldn't have, that really was hard to really understand the revenue side. And we were very fortunate in the last several years that we did manage to run a surplus. So, you know, for the congregation to know, we managed a $500,000 surplus over the last 7 fiscals. So we really haven't had to feed anything that the congregation was doing operational-wise. Now, what Rena's trying to do with that connective tissue of programming and all the great things, they do take staff, they do take an intent with purpose. So we are very much committed to that as long as we can make sure that we're not running a deficit. We believe very strongly that as the congregation creates from draft to final version of strategic vision, we think that we will be able to balance the budget and even add to the surplus or a surplus opportunity. So I want to thank Rena, and we are planning a forecast with the sustainability that includes all the pieces that we're talking about that Rena's working on. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We have a question over here.
Yep.
I guess my question is a little bit about financial as well. On the slide that you had up, the total pledges were $8.2 million. The Shaarey Zedek's own capital was another 3 to bring you up to the 11.2. And you said, or showed in there, pledges already collected were 5 million. Now, at this point of the game, you have a proposed budget of $17 million. In my eyes, the gap is between 5 million and 17 million. Pledges right now do not always mean revenue coming in. So my first question, part of it, is how are you funding your construction costs right now? Are you using bank loans, etc.? Or are you prompting people who have made a pledge to step up and turn it into real hard cash?
Thanks a lot. That's a great question. And as you can anticipate, the requirement for cash isn't smooth throughout the process. And in fact, most cash will be required by next May, whereas the pledges in many cases are over 60 months, and we need the cash over 36 months. We have arranged a $9 million line with the bank, and that was the $1.5 million of soft money that we had budgeted for. Our hope is that by people both accelerating their donations, as many have, as well as using our own capital funds, that we won't have to use the bank at all. Until now, we haven't touched the bank at all. We're anticipating as construction accelerates in the next few months, we may have to use our capital funds. Now, I want to be clear with the congregation. There's a number of categories of capital funds. There are capital funds that are connected to the cemetery and to perpetual care. Under no circumstance will those funds ever be touched in relation to the construction. Under no circumstance will they ever be used in any kind of a plan to self-fund. We have other funds. David, I don't recall how much the other funds are. I think about 6 million or 7 million.
At last statement, there is between 5 and 6 million.
And so those funds will be used, and if they are used, they'll be used in conjunction with a resolution of the board that says we should be budgeting for surpluses, where the surpluses rebuild the capital pools. So by doing that, we won't be having to borrow the money from the bank at all. So till now, we have not had to touch the bank. Till now, we have not had to touch our capital funds. We've been able to fund everything. And as I say, even change orders that have been coming in, we've been able to fund out of the contingency fund. Now, we said $17 million, and the difference on the $17 million and what we have now, we have many donors who we're still working with to make donations, and we're hopeful that with this presentation and as the project proceeds, we'll be able to show some of those donors to the importance of this project and that they will be donating. We're fairly confident of getting a good grant from the government. I just can't go into any more detail on that, but at this stage, I can tell you that we believe that we'll more than cover the entire project, including the ability to purchase proper art, etc. So at this stage, we're not anticipating a problem, but I'm hopeful that everybody like yourself and all the other donors who we have here in the room are thanked, and that those who haven't given will look positively on giving to the campaign.
Can I just continue with my question that's a little bit financial? And that is, you alluded to this grant from the government. Is it an outright gift from the government?
Yes.
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 It is?
It is.
So it's not a loan, it's not interest-bearing?
No, it's a grant.
Okay. When I was at Gail Asper's house last September, when you did a presentation, we talked about shortfalls, and the shortfall, the question was, would you be prepared to go into a bank and mortgage the building if you were short the capital?
Well, as I say, we have a $9 million loan right now that we're not using with the bank. I can tell you that when we met at Gail's house last year, this program wasn't open yet from the government. So this government has opened it up. It's being paid out in various tranches, and the tranche that's coming out in June, July is $50 million. And of that $50 million, I can't be certain, but I believe that we will be successful in some money out of that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Please understand that if we do not respond to your question this evening, you will have an opportunity to have it recorded later at the round tables. For those of you who are watching online, we can't answer every single question, but we will respond to you because we will have a record of everything that was written down in the chat. Robert, one more from the chat, please.
Okay, Evelyn Hecht, do you have any idea of how many paid members would be needed to sustain the operating costs of the synagogue?
Evelyn, you must be online, and I thank you, Evelyn, for your commitment over the many decades since you were president of this board, and I thank you for all that you've done over the years. Do we know how many paid members? The difficulty is that from things that I read from other synagogues across North America, I think that the funding model that we've relied upon as a synagogue since this place began may not work in the future. The funding model of paying for dues and seats may not be the way that we carry on. And so it's a very difficult question to say how many members do we need. You know, we can do the math on that, but I'm not sure that that's going to be sustainable 5 years from now or 10 years from now or 15 years from now. And with that, the board is doing a lot of work at looking at alternate funding sources, and you'll be hearing about more of those in the months to come, ways of getting funds to operate, because we recognize that the model that the people in this room have been used to paying may not work with newer generations. That's certainly the indication we're getting across North America, and we want to be ready for that. So the way I've typically talked to the board about this issue is that the Shaarey Zedek is doing really well right now. We're very sustainable at the moment. Your board is trying to think ahead 5 years or 10 years or 15 years from now to know that we can continue to be sustainable. Because today we're fine, but what's going to happen in the years to come? That's what we're trying to do a lot of thinking about. But before I go, I hope that answers your question, Evelyn. Before I go on, I do want to tell you that in the short time that I've been president, I've been unbelievably thankful to have a board that has been incredibly committed. I know that there's many board members here in the room, and I'm going to put you on the spot and ask you to stand, and I'd really like everybody to give you an applause, because it's each of you who've really made this journey, this last few months, successful. And I think that the congregation needs to recognize each of you because of the great work you've done. So please stand, and please a round of applause for all of you. Thank you, everybody. The other group that I've been very fortunate to work with is your staff. There's a tireless staff that you have, starting with the clergy team of Tali, Cantor Leslie, the rabbi. I've been very fortunate to work with them. And then there's the office staff. And many of them, if not all of them, are here tonight. Just almost everybody is here. Robert is hiding back here. But I'd like everybody to step out, all the staff step out, because I think you deserve great applause for the work that you do. And I thank you, and this congregation needs to thank you, because it is because of your tireless work and the board's work that this place is as sustainable now as it is.
Okay, so is there any more questions from the floor?
I've got three people in the queue.
Okay, so we're going to take those three. Anybody who has a question on the chat, we promise within the next week you will receive an answer to your question. And any of the questions that were submitted in writing will also receive answers. No question will go unanswered. But for those who are here in the room,
I've got four, actually.
Okay, four?
So, 4 questions.
You're only allowed to ask once? Okay.
Not me.
When you come back for seconds, okay, go ahead.
I have one question and one comment. First question is, I notice, with all due respect to the pews which are in question right now in terms of their substance, I notice that there is nothing, they're very lovely and they're very mid-century, and I thank you for the design. But having said that, I notice that there is nothing to hold a prayer book. There's no slot on the back of the bench to hold a prayer book, which means they're going to have to go on the floor or make room beside someone, and that presents a difficulty. That's the first part.
Okay, I'll answer. I apologize that the renderings did not show that, but they will be included in the pews. Okay, and very good eye, by the way.
Thanks,
Do you want to
Shelley.
work part-time for number 10? Okay, I'm joking.
You know, it's that kind of attention to detail that's going to
I
make
might
the
consider it.
difference.
The other comment, and it's a comment, and with all due respect to building codes and so forth, you do need to have more than one railing. The ramp was originally designed to carry the Torah into the congregation so that people would not have to go down steps, break their neck, and drop the Torah. You know, the fact that it happens to have a railing is a plus, but for someone who happens to be on the far side of the chapel or on the far side of the sanctuary, to accept an honor means they have to walk all the way across in front and use the ramp. That's what those banisters, those were for, and I suggest you reconsider. They're not that ugly, and they really don't disturb a sort line, although architecturally, in terms of the rendering, I get them.
Thanks, Shelley. Leon, our shamus, is going to give the mic to the next speaker.
Bonnie Robinson. This is just a question about sound transfer. I'm a bit concerned about having two very musical and lively events going on side by side in the sanctuary and the chapel, and wonder how a movable wall would be able to keep the sound from transferring.
Very good question and concern, and we share the concern with you. And in all our projects where we're dealing with acoustic walls in large banquets, the Winnipeg Convention Center, banquet halls and hotels, it is a concern. So the detailing that is underway to seal those movable partitions against the adjacent wall, against the ceiling overhead and the floor, we're doing our best to get the rating that these walls say that they will perform to. So my honest answer is that we're doing our best to make sure that they operate the way they're supposed to.
Bonnie, there's one other thing that I should mention, is if you remember the rendering, it's not just the walls, there's going to be a room in between them as well. So if the room is split, as was shown, there's going to be the main sanctuary that we anticipate a completely empty room with a wall on either side, and then there'll be the family service. So there's going to be not just these walls that Dave is mentioning, but there's also going to be an entire room between them. No, we're not talking about the chapel. If you have this family, that's not where it's usually going to be. It's usually going to be in the third room. There will be an occasion on that, yes.
These are excellent points, and I thank you so much. So I think that we have two more questions. Okay. We're actually doing pretty well for time.
Elliot, oh, hi. I'm Ruthie Laveman. Hi. Haven't been in this place in a long time. So, right, I actually have 3 questions. I realize you're saying 1. I'm going to piggyback on earlier. My wife Judy asked about the acoustic engineer and whether one was consulted on the actual acoustics. I'm not talking about your audio system. I get, Anibal, that you're going to have a state-of-the-art system. So are you able to answer that one question? Then I have 2 to follow. Okay, you got that answer? Good. Okay. All right. Next is, so, you know, I've had a few minutes with your document you referred to as a strategic plan. Normally, when I look at strategic planning work, they involve goals and objectives. And then they involve some realistic, concrete items, you know, along the objective line that you can fulfill. And what I'm not seeing, I'm seeing a list of what look to be some feedback from a variety of consultations. I'm going to call it almost like a laundry list, if you will. One thing I want to speak to is you talk about financial sustainability and some of your financial issues. I'd like to just speak quickly about the daycare. What I heard from Jonathan, I want to thank those of you who put together all that hard work, because it's not easy. I don't know what the actual numbers are. We're understanding there's 32 spots you're looking at. I don't know where those 32 little people are coming from, what households will be able to give that revenue, because a private daycare is very expensive. I don't know a lot of people that will be able to afford maybe, I don't know, 70, 80 bucks a day. We know that it's costly. So
May I just speak to that first point, because there's a lot of things to remember. So with regard, now, it's an excellent question. It's a private daycare. We can ask what we want. It doesn't prevent people from getting subsidies from organizations such as JCFS. So people will be able to apply for subsidy to come to and Shaarey Zedek may also be able to provide scholarships. So that is an option.
All right, so in the future, it would be good to actually see some actual numbers when we're talking about this kind of venture. It's a new venture, you see, so I'm in the realm of the board making a decision on behalf of the congregation to engage in a new business enterprise without doing a referendum, an actual referendum of the members. I hear that some people have been consulted along the way. I wasn't one of them, and that's whatever. But I'm just saying that that's a new business. We don't have a business plan for our building. So I guess I'm trying to understand how that can proceed without that endorsement.
So it actually was approved and it was voted on.
When?
The way the bylaws work is that a board has been elected and you give the board through your vote the opportunity to deliberate and to vote. And it was done with quite a lot of, it was quite a process that they went through. And that's how they came to that decision. And it took many, many months for them to get there. These are very legitimate and good questions.
Thank you.
Because it is for the future
Well, then a
of our
supplemental to
synagogue.
that would be that the board, under my understanding of the bylaws, don't have the jurisdiction to create brand new enterprises under the building. What they do have jurisdiction to do, and I've talked about this before, I talked about the AGM, so I don't know, but they have the ability to make sure and take care of the existing property and the building itself. But there are limitations. So that's where I'm inviting that kind of answer to understand why something that's a total change in what it is that the Shaarey Zedek Synagogue is going to be doing, it's a new business, let's not forget that, how that's
This is actually a new program.
It's a business.
Because we are a nonprofit organization. One of the reasons we are doing this is not to make money, it's to break even. And any additional funds that would be made would be reintegrated into our programming to help things that don't make money. Okay, so some of our classes, some of our programs that we try to make low barrier, because you know, we try to subsidize and sponsor a lot of the things that we do so that everybody can come. So having that kind of a daycare would help to facilitate it in the same way that our catering, the goal of our catering, why we outsource, why we bring in all of these other events and we do lunches for different groups, not just for our members, is also a way to create a source of revenue that we put back into our activities. So this isn't another business venture. We are not a business.
Okay, well, you did call it a for-profit daycare, so by virtue of that.
It's really
that's
not
fine.
going to be for profit. It's just money that's reinvested in what we do
I'm
already.
going to accept that. My final question, and it's a big one, because I've been asking this question for a long, long time.
I thought we only had one question each.
This is my
Okay,
third.
we'll
It's
indulge
my
you.
third.
One more question, but
one
make
more.
it short.
Are you guys okay if I ask one more question?
Because the pastry is waiting.
You're not okay? Really?
No, it's okay. It's okay.
It's important.
Go
It's
ahead.
super important.
Go ahead, Ruth. Go ahead.
Hi. I'd like to know when we are going to be rejoining the United Synagogue of Conservative Judaism.
Excellent question, and I will definitely.
I'll
Go
answer-
ahead, Neil.
I will answer that.
And
this
after
really is
that,
the
we are going to join the round tables.
Is this on? I've got it. At this time, I can tell you that conversations have opened with United Synagogue to see about our rejoining. We did not belong to United Synagogue a number of years ago. It was a decision made maybe 10 or 15 years ago that at that time the cost was about $90,000 per year US dollars at that time. We are talking with them now, and the cost has come down considerably. We're seeing whether or not it might be in Canadian dollars. So that conversation is going on right now. We're also in conversation right now. So that conversation has started. Fanny and I have been talking to them. At the same time, I can tell you we're also in conversation with B'nai B'rith Youth. Right now, B'nai B'rith Youth is at the Rady Center. We're talking with them about the possibility of sharing the program with the Rady Center to bring youth into our building as well. So that's going on as well. It's premature to get into much more detail either about United Synagogue or about BBYO, but I can tell you that those issues are being looked at. I can tell you that issues around schmoozers are being looked at. We are looking at many issues right now, and I can assure you we will continue to keep the congregation advised on all of these things.
So I'm going to, I know that many of you have more questions. We're not cutting them off. We're simply going into the next room. You will have a chance to sit at the table. There will be a board member at each table and a staff person. They will record all of your questions. Plus, we have some delicious treats prepared by our catering department. So come and meet us outside. And thank you all for coming tonight. Much appreciated.